Hi everyone, it's Kenzie Dolan from Jade Rituals, and I am the certified professional astrologer that is behind the company that is meant to be with you at every passage. And tonight we are going to be talking about something outside of astrology. So this winter I'm hosting a lot of different types of events, and some of them have to do with astrology, New Wave of Witches. I'm doing my Saturn Return Mastermind as well, but it's not really over the gathering. And tonight, Rise from the Ashes, the rally, they're not really about astrology. Instead, they're about, everyday occurrences and occurrences that actually kind of sweep us off of our feet. So, thank you for being here. Um, like the gathering, the rally is going to take some time for people to catch on to what it's about. And so I'm going to use tonight as a introduction to what this offering can give you. So we'll start off with a little bit of astrology because we have a lot of intense energy going on right now. Pluto is linking up with all the personal planets. It did so with Venus a couple days ago. It's doing so right now with Mercury, and then tomorrow with the Sun. So Kazemi with Pluto. Pluto will be in the heart of the Sun tomorrow. A big, big day. So that's January 23rd in the Northern Hemisphere, New York specifically. And then after that, Mars will link up with Pluto. And so it is really about rebellion because all of this is happening in the sign of Aquarius. And I'm going to be honest with you, I look at myself and my career portfolio, and I do see a rebel. And I want to bring a gathering, a rally together for people that also feel a slight bit rebellious in their fields, or feel rebellious in what they want to do. And being a rebel is not necessarily bad. It's just there's a way to do it, right? So I'm going to be on fire about this topic because, career is very, very important for me. I'm a Scorpio stellium, but all of that Scorpio energy is in the house of career. So career was always going to be very important for me. And I had a lot of dreams for my career, a lot of aspirations, a lot of goals. And I really did think that I was going to be in the corporate world climbing the ladder now. Like I really thought that that was my destiny for a career. And now I am an entrepreneur. It's not the sexiest job there is. At times it's very demanding, very hard. You feel like you want to give up quite a bit. But doing the thing that I like most is really rewarding. Having deals that go through are very rewarding. So, you know, do I wish that I had a steady paycheck? Of course. But do I miss what was going on at some of those round tables in the corporate world? No, I don't. And I'm going to share with you my personal experience and why I'm so passionate about protecting other people that might go through similar things. So let's take it back a couple years prior to even me moving to New York when I was in high school, actually. And in high school is when I got my first official paycheck from an employer. And that was in Clarkson Valley, Missouri, Chesterfield, Missouri, at Forest Hills Country Club. And I was 16 at the time when I accepted that job and worked that first summer. And I ended up working there for a very, very long time, at least 5 years, it might have been 8. And I was one of their best employees. And then going into college, I went to the University of Missouri. I also had a part-time job and I won Employee of the Month. Outside of that, I was an intern before I graduated college. I interned with a handmade jewelry designer, Belle Style, learned a lot there. I also interned at my dad's company, Dolan Memory Care Homes, helped with the marketing department, actually launched their social media accounts. And, prior to even taking a job at Forest Hills, my sister and I ran a successful pet sitting operation in our neighborhood. I babysat, and I was a high achiever in both high school and college, where I would, in college, I won a scholarship that not many people won. There was only one freshman that won it. It was through the Pan-Hellenic Association, so Greek life, and I was the one freshman that won that, which just shows that I am an ambitious person. And that makes sense because of all that energy in the 10th house. Plus, I have a lot of Capricorn energy as well. So career is important. And so I'm trying to paint a picture because what happened was, um, when I finally graduated with my degree, which was a bachelor's and master's in accounting, and I got a minor in human development and family studies, and I got offered this job before I even graduated. But once I entered the real world and I moved to New York City and I started to work as a professional in the corporate world, things changed. I no longer was the best employee. In fact, I was labeled as a problem worker. And it wasn't because I didn't do the work, it was because I didn't sign on to the style of work. So I obviously did things a little bit differently. I guess a lot of my superiors didn't appreciate it, and that was some of the main reasons why I was targeted in the workforce. I also, like I said, was a rebel. I would sometimes talk back to my superiors, and when you're in this line of work, a lot of the time you can't do that. So in the corporate world, there is a certain way to act, and it came down to the fact that I just wouldn't conform. And so one of my superiors actually told me that when you work at this company, that you have to be a soldier, and Kenzie, you are not a soldier. So even though my corporate world life lasted for only 5 years and it was quote unquote unsuccessful, I learned a lot. And I can relate to people's struggles because as much as the landscape has changed, the foundation of the corporate world has pretty much stayed the same. So I want to have this rally because like I said, am a astrologer. So I work with a lot of people that have 9 to 5 jobs. And a lot of these people, like myself, are high achievers. And they're doing really well in their corporate roles. But they are coming up against, toxic work environments, whether it's a toxic boss or a toxic team or maybe a toxic coworker. And it does derail people at times. It does throw a wrench into things. And I feel like, nowadays there's more people that are talking about this, but wouldn't it be nice to get in a room of people and strategize in real time about maybe what is going on. So that is why I created this meetup, and I'm going to be hosting it just in the winter to pilot it and to see how it does. And so we're meeting tonight in January. We're going to meet once in February and again in March. And it's all going to be at the end of the month, around the 22nd of each month. So, going back to just relating to the environment that's going on right now in 2026 in the corporate world, how it really hasn't changed that much, the foundation, since I was in the corporate world last, which was in 2020. I was in the corporate world from 2014 up to 2020. So I did a lot of different things. I was in a gosh, I can't even remember what it was called, but I was in like a pre-internship group, and then I finally did do an internship, and then I got into the role as a full-time associate, and then I switched jobs. And so in total I was in and out of the corporate world for about 5 years. I did have to go back to Mizzou to finish my degree, but was always in communication with the Big Four when I was on campus. I interviewed with all four firms. I got I got pretty far with three firms, and I ended up selecting, the one that I eventually worked at. And then I actually quit that job with nothing lined up. I was pretty far in the interview process, and I had two jobs that I was selecting from, and I ended up choosing a job that wasn't going to be accounting. And so I switched industries or parts of the business, and I went from accounting into marketing, and I was in a marketing role for about 2 years, and that's when I got laid off due to the pandemic. So, I have literally gone through pretty much everything that you could go through at work. I've gotten laid off. I've been put on a PIP, a performance improvement plan. But like I said, I also got a full-time offer before even graduating, um, and also got a full-time offer after quitting a job and having nothing lined up, which is kind of a risk. But I really want to talk about that one in particular, and I would almost like to maybe start next meeting with that story. So I'm going to make a mental note there. And then I have also been quickly promoted. Within, 3 months, 1 month. So I have a lot of experience. I've trained a lot of people in, all of my different roles. Um, I've had to make executive decisions on my own too, because both of my corporate jobs, a lot of the time, I was sometimes the only person on the engagement or at the event, that I actually was the one that had a lot of autonomy, and I needed to make executive decisions on the spot. I have a lot of variety. I have lived the full spectrum of experiences at work and on the job. And to be honest with you, living in New York City, I have been in very fast-paced environments. Whether it was on a busy season at KPMG, or it was, you know, concerts at Madison Square Garden with, 20,000 fans in attendance, or it's high caliber red carpets at City, like the Tony Awards or the VMAs, or, a full restaurant at a New York institution, Cafe Mogador, and working the floor, um, right after the pandemic. when restaurants were just coming back and people finally wanted to get out of their like COVID routine and go to a restaurant. That was the wild, wild west at one point. All restaurants were kind of feeling uh, short-staffed at the time. And so I learned a lot when I was, working as a host and then also became a server and then actually was offered a management position just because excelled uh, quickly at the role because I had hospitality experience prior to that. I mean, that was my first real-time job. I'll talk a lot about transferable skills too, because like I've said, I've had a career portfolio. I have Pluto in the 10th house. I've had many endings and beginnings when it comes to work. I have worn many hats. I have never turned down a job because it's blue collar or I'm too good for it. No, absolutely not. I've walked dogs in New York City. I have done like any job that I could get. I have applied to a lot of different jobs. I've interviewed. I feel like I have always been the type of person that if I like the mission of the company, if I have a passion for some of the th same things that they do, you know, I can work pretty much any job. Um, I have worked high paying jobs. I've worked low paying jobs. I have been overpaid. I have been underpaid. As an astrologer, I'm running my own business. I had to set my own prices. I've had to, negotiate and pitch myself at different venues and restaurants and organizations that could maybe host me. I've had to, create programs for my company, and some of them have succeeded and others have failed, and it's just kind of been a really good experience running my own business. I have literally done every single thing. I haven't hired anybody, and that is not necessarily a flex because, it is good to have other people, looking at your things, but I'm also very proud of myself for, doing my website, making my podcast, making all my video content on YouTube, making all my social media assets, writing the copy, writing my emails, you know, doing outreach, going to the events, being at the events, reading for people, all that stuff. It's all me. And it's definitely not been easy, but like I said, I've learned a lot. So I really want to talk about transferable skills in here. I want to talk about the hard things that are going on, the conversations that haunt you after you leave work, the ones where you're having anxiety. Look, I got shingles when I worked at one of my corporate jobs. Sometimes these jobs are so stressful that they do things to our body. I want to talk about things like that. I also want to talk about, what you can do in the moment to get through the really tough times because there's things called EAPs and you can use those for therapy. You can come to sessions like these to talk to other people, to strategize, to feel less alone, to understand that this is happening at every other job. The grass is always greener on the other side, but once you realize that no matter no matter you take the M off of the company and you replace it with a K, you still got that G at the end. And, at the end of the day, I'm, it's still toxic. So I'm just talking about how, I had the idea that, oh, I'm going to be switching jobs, that I'm going to a completely different industry, a company that focuses primarily on this, it's going to be the best thing ever. I'm never going to have any problems. And guess what? I had problems right away. I want to talk about how you advocate for yourself, how you create audit trails, how you stay organized, and you make sure that you advocate for yourself through metrics and facts and you're strategic about the way that you advocate for yourself. So I want to talk about HR. What is HR or people practices role? Like, can you go to them? Are they to be trusted? There's so many different things to talk about when it comes to work, and at times I feel like I felt very lost, and I definitely was able to call family members that have worked the corporate world before, and they were able to kind of coach me through some of the things that I've experienced. But sometimes you don't have that. You don't have parents that were in the corporate world, and so they don't really even know how to mentor you through these really challenging times. And so that is why I'm doing these meetups. I think it's very important as a professional to have somebody that you know that you can go to that has been through similar experiences that can give you wisdom and advice and insights into what worked, what doesn't work. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I did a lot of things in the corporate world that did not work, that ended up, not benefiting me. Okay. But I did some things that I am very proud of, and I would want to share those. So I have a lot of stories. They are juicy, they are messy. I have a lot of a lot of stories, and I really think that instead of keeping them to myself, I think it's better to share them with people and get people to understand that, you know, shit happens and it is okay to, go to work, show up and say, I don't really know how to do this, asking for help. How do you ask for help? How do you structure your emails? Uh, what do you do when a boss is really on your ass? Um, there's so many different scenarios, and I think that hopefully this will catch on and we can get a good group of people together and we can all learn from each other. So, thank you for checking this introduction of Rise from the Ashes, the rally out, and be sure to look out for the next meetup, which is going to be in February, and then there will be another one in March. All right. Until then, take care.